Hi, my name is Nick, and my New Year's resolution this year was to read more. Last year, I read a fair amount at the end of the year, and the year before it was the very same thing. So this year, I'm trying to be better at reading at the start of the month. So in January, I was able to read 2 books, and I started 2 more. So I'm kind of ramping up into the swing of things. It's also currently not the end of January, but at the same time, I know next week my week at work is going to be really stressful, so I don't think I'm going to finish any of the other 2 books that I started, so that's why I'm making this now. One of the books that I started on, but I have not finished yet, is The Great Hunt, and this is the second Wheel of Time book. I really just read the prologue. That's really as far as I got. But I did enjoy the prologue at least, so we'll see how that goes. But I'm hoping that I can get this finished in February, and so I'll talk about it more next month. The second book that I've started but haven't finished yet is The Startup of You by Reid Hoffman and Ben Casanocha. I'm not pronouncing that correctly at all. But I'm about halfway through. Or actually, I take that back. I'm about a third of the way through. And I'm liking it so far. It's one of those books where I think I'll read like a page or 2 pages and then I think about what I've read for the next 15 minutes, which is really how I kind of like to ingest self-help, just to see if whatever they're saying resonates with me or not. So I'm hoping also in February that I get this one completed, and I will give another review when I finish that one. For books that I actually finished, the one that I read in a day was This Is How You Lose the Time War. And I did not like it at all. I finished it in a day because I knew that if I did not finish it then, that I would never get back to it. It's a really short read. It's really quick. I didn't like it because I think I kept expecting it to be something else, and I fault it more for what I was thinking it was going to be. I guess I was mostly disappointed with it because I expected it to be a little different than it was. I really loved the language, and I really like how the authors put this book together until the end. Because it was one of those books where I feel like in sci-fi and other things, I like things to be explained to me, just how the world works, how the universe is all compiled, and you really just don't get a resolution in this book, and that's fine. For most things, I just wish that I would have known that going into it. Instead, I kind of was reading the book, getting really invested with both the characters and thinking that at the end you would figure out what this whole thing is about, and you just don't get it. I think the poetry is great. I think the longing and the relationship that's built is really cool. But in the end, I really just wanted more from it. I probably should have not finished it, but I kept thinking, oh, you know what, it'll turn a corner. But, when you're reading a book and you see you have 20 pages left and you're like, there's absolutely zero way that I'm going to get through this and get the resolution that I want, that's kind of what happened. But I did enjoy the day that I read it. I wish it would have connected with me a little bit more. I personally am giving it a 3 out of 5 stars. It was just not a book for me. I am someone who kind of likes my sci-fi books to give me every resolution and kind of put it together a little bit nicer than this one was. I think if I give it a second read and knowing what it's about, knowing the ending, knowing how it's kind of put together, I think I could bump it up to a 4-star review. But right now it's just 3 for me. Just because, I feel like it was building to something and building and building and building, and I was, getting really excited for the ending. I liked the final action sequence, sort of. I was having a little bit of trouble following the book a lot. The way that it bounces between, timelines and locations and all over the place. And, when they do this, it seems like the sentences were, there was, 3 sentences, and then it was oh, okay, we're in a totally different time period, and we're in, this totally different arc, okay? I didn't have enough time to breathe. But I think if you had, I don't know. If you're really into that book and you can keep up with it, I think that's great. I usually just like slower paced books as well, just because I like to get into them. But in this one, I really didn't feel that at all. It's kind of you were almost seeing flashes of timelines and things. And yeah, just for me personally, I know other people probably really enjoy this book. I know it was really big on TikTok, which is why I read it. But it just didn't resonate with me, and I think that's okay. But I would say if you're into sci-fi and you want to know how all of the technology works and how all the pieces are aligned and things, I would skip this one because it's not really what you're given. But I think if you want a story that's about 2 people falling for each other and against all odds making it through, then this one's probably a pretty good read. And the other book that I finished this month and I absolutely adored is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. I think it's one of those books that like I will pick up and will read occasionally in the next few years. That's how much I liked it, and see how my perspective on it changes. This one was also really big on TikTok, which is another reason that I read it. I really have gotten quite a lot of my reading suggestions from TikTok, I feel like, recently, with the exception of most of the fantasy books that I like, because I just find it's a really interesting place to learn about like new books, especially like pop fic. So anyways, that's why I picked this one up, and I really like didn't know anything about it going into it. Like the cover is like it just has a wave on it, and so I had no idea. But it's about like these two game developers and their friendship. It almost feels like an epic, a modern epic. It really just goes through like so many different time periods and like shows how these two people are growing and how they're like connected and all these other things. I really did enjoy the book quite a lot. I love like startup culture, so like that whole piece of it I really enjoyed. Just the idea of like your friends too, of like growing and seeing how you adapt. And truly, I feel like one of the main characters is a villain, which I'm kind of interested in. Like you kind of see everything from his perspective, but I don't know. I like the books where you're like following somebody, but you have like maybe a complicated feeling about them. Because you want them, like I feel like in most things, you want your protagonist to do well and you want your protagonist to succeed. But at the same time, too, it's like he's kind of not a good person. And it's sort of hidden in some of the ways that it's kind of feeling. But towards the end, you really start to see it and really start like to connect the dots. And then even though he is a bad person or you maybe feel complicated about the relationship, there's like a piece at the end where you're like, wow, that was actually kind of nice. Sort of, but not really. And so I kind of have like a complicated relationship with one of the main characters, and I really appreciate that because it's not like so black and white. It's something that you can really like, you put the book down and you can think about it for a couple of days and you're like, okay, now that I've digested that, like, how do I feel about it? I really like how both characters are written. I felt like the two main characters in particular are really well written. And there's a point in the book where it's like, I don't know, 75% of the way through where you just kind of get hit by a train. And yeah, I think I read like the start of the chapter and then I just didn't finish it for like a week, which is probably why my reading progress wasn't as strong this month as it could have been, but I really enjoyed it. I love the experience of that. I wasn't willing to like rush through it and like try to get it over with. I really wanted to digest it, be with the feelings for a while and just see how it goes. And recently I've really enjoyed books like that. And so I think that's why I think I will give Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow 5 stars, 5 out of 5. I really enjoyed it. I talked to all my friends about it. Like it was one of those books where you could like, it was like a book club book, but like in the good way where it's like you can have such different interpretations of each character and their motivations. I think Sadie in particular, you kind of at some point see her maybe as a victim, but at other points you see her as like really empowered and really strong. And so I like the dichotomy of that, like how you feel about each character like as they grow up and progress and become themselves. So I really did enjoy I really enjoyed the first parts of the book, especially the coming of age. And then I like the idea of like as Sam, he was creating like his own mythos to like overcome the fears and I guess feelings he had about himself, which I feel like it's pretty prevalent, especially in people who feel like the world has been unkind to them. And then all of a sudden now they're on top of it and now people are really appreciating them and they think, well, maybe I was imagining too much of it before, but now I have to like be this character. So I really enjoyed it. Marx was my favorite character. I like the idea of someone who like is a good connector. It's something that like I almost like try to be, because it's like you are the person who can find the talent and also put them together like in the correct way. But then you're also kind of like the glue guy. Like you're the person who can kind of like you're the conductor. Maybe you're not the best talented person, but you're the person who like people want to be around and people like don't idolize but see how valuable you are, like in almost like a postscript kind of way. Like you're like, oh, you know, I didn't really think about like what this person contributed until the end. And but yeah, I really enjoyed all the characters except Dov, I think. But obviously I don't think you're supposed to like Dov, and he's kind of the villain. But I really but I really just loved the book, and I really enjoy talking about it, especially with people who have read it and have read the whole thing. I think it's just a fun book. There's some questions in the back of it for a book club, and I kind of use those and texted my friends who have read it, like to get their opinions. And people who haven't even read the book in like 6 or 7 months were able to give me all sorts of like ideas and thoughts about it, because it's just one of those books that like it just sits with you, I think, very well. I think in a couple years too, I'll reread it again and see, how I feel about it, if I feel any differently. I think it's a book that in a couple years I will view a little differently. Just maybe it's like I'm farther in my career, have different sorts of relationships with different people, just kind of like get different perspectives, and I think like I'll change how I feel about it. It's kind of like The Catcher in the Rye. Was for me, where when you first read it, well, when I first read it in high school, I thought that the main guy, he was so cool, he's like doing all this stuff, and then when I was in college, I kind of thought the main guy, he's kind of arrogant and he's kind of annoying. And then now I read it last year, and I kind of just feel bad for him because of all these bad things that have happened to him. And I think Tomorrow is going to be a book very similar to that for me. Right now I'm kind of in that mood of like idolizing some of the main characters and thinking very highly of them, and maybe feeling very negative towards others. But I wonder in a couple years if like I'm a little farther along in my career, if I feel any different about it. So anyways, those are the books that I read for this month. I'm hoping I finish both the Startup Review and The Great Hunt next month, and that I pick a few more books. I think I'm going to try to go to Barnes & Noble today. So, yeah, I'm really interested. I'm feeling very excited about reading, and yeah, I'm excited that January. I always feel excited when the months are coming to an end, because you can see all of the progress that you've made during the time period, which I know some people may not like as much, but I really enjoy it. So anyways, I hope I read a lot more in February. I hope I get a lot more time. We'll see what happens at work. But anyways, I will see you next week. Okay, bye.